Hi, I'm Jim from the Wyoming State Museum, and usually if you're seeing a video that my cheerful face is on, it's about an artifact that the Wyoming State Museum has currently stored in its collections. But it is a beautiful day, a beautiful late spring day, here in southeast Wyoming, and so instead of doing a video about an artifact, I thought I would step outside and do a video about how sometimes evidence of local history can be hiding in plain sight. So in order to do that, I came to the south lawn of the Barrett building, and the Barrett building is the building that houses the Wyoming State Museum. So you can come and see the things I'm going to show you for yourself if you have an interest and you're in the area. But in order to explain what I'm talking about in terms of evidence of local history, I need to give you a little bit of context of the plot of land that I'm standing on here currently. So right now you're looking at the south end of the Barrett building here in Cheyenne. The Barrett building houses the Wyoming State Museum as well as the Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources. If you look off in the distance there, you can see the Wyoming State Capitol building. And the building through the trees over here with the long narrow windows, that's the Wyoming State Supreme Court building. Now back in the late 1870s, early 1880s, the Union Pacific Railroad gave the city of Cheyenne the equivalent of 4 city blocks to create a park. And the city of Cheyenne spent a fair bit of money in developing that park. They brought in trees to be planted, quite a few trees to be planted. They put in fountains, there were pathways, there were shaded areas covered with awnings to allow people to get out of the sun. But for about 50 years, the park was dedicated in June of 1886. For about 50 years after that, what became known as Cheyenne City Park was a very popular place for local residents, and all kinds of activities took place here on a regular basis. It was really the place to go to if you wanted to get into a green space. There aren't a lot of green spaces outside of the city of Cheyenne, and the city park was definitely turned into one. You can see here some photographs of the use of City Park through the years. These photographs are available over at the Wyoming State Archives if you're interested in seeing images of Cheyenne City Park or finding other historic images from around the state. But they give you some idea of the kinds of activities that took place in the park for, like I said, about 50 years. But in the late 1930s, the city transferred two of the 4 sections of land to the state of Wyoming to build the Supreme Court building over there. And then just a few years later, they took the rest of the city park and they transferred that to the state so that the state could build the Barrett building, which you're looking at right here. So that gives you some idea of the history of this land, but the evidence of its previous use of a park can still be found. So take a close look at this photograph. And then if you look at my video here, you'll see that I'm standing in the same place that this photograph was taken back in, I believe it was 1939. And you can see the same flagstone pathway heading off into the distance, but if you look on the right, what used to be open space is now taken up by the Barrett building, but you can still see just barely through the trees there the State Supreme Court building, which you could easily see in the photograph I first put up on the screen here. But what is really interesting about this flagstone path is that set into it are carvings. And if you look at this one, it's of a stagecoach. It has Cheyenne Frontier Days, the daddy of them all, carved into it as well. Part of the image has been filled with concrete. And up at the top it says, "This stagecoach made last trip on the Overland Trail, Julesburg, Colorado, Cheyenne, Wyoming, December 1866, I believe it says." So what exactly is this, and what is the point that I'm trying to make? Well, this pathway that I'm walking on is the original pathway of Cheyenne City Park. And that carving, as near as we can tell, is something that was created by the Works Progress Administration back in the 1930s. Back in the 1930s, the Works Progress Administration, there was a lot of effort being put into giving people jobs around the United States because of the Depression. And so one of the things that people were hired to do was create artwork. And it's believed, although I haven't found any evidence directly of this, I'm still in the process of researching it, it's believed that some of those artists from the Works Progress Administration were hired to put carvings into the walkways of Cheyenne City Park. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to have a wander through and see some of these carvings that still exist out here on the south lawn of the Barrett building in what was once Cheyenne City Park. So the next one up the pathway here you can see is a sheep. A little bit of detail here on the head. It's not fine art by any means, but I still think it's pretty cool. Walk up over this direction. And I'll show you what's probably my favorite carving of all of them. And that is this windmill. This is one of the more well-executed carvings on the sidewalk or on the pathway. I have a feeling somebody knew or had seen a pretty good example of a windmill to be able to have this in their mind and be able to carve it. The light is not great at this time of day for this, but still a pretty interesting piece. But let's go take a look at some other ones. This image is possibly of a pronghorn, maybe a young deer. Don't really know for sure what the artist had in mind. This one's a little bit worse for wear. The neck has been broken right across there. All of these carvings are slowly starting to erode away. They've changed quite a bit just in the years that I've known that they were here. Another interesting one is this, primarily because I have absolutely no idea what it is. I think that at one end here there's some sort of I know it's a barrel, but I don't know if it's something that has a spout at one end. I don't know if this is something that's on fire down here in this end. Really hard to tell what it is, but somebody put some effort into it. If anybody has any idea what this might be, please let me know. Pine tree, or some sort of tree, anyway. This is another one of my favorites. This is of a gas station. In fact, it even says so right here. You can see the word gas here on the side of the building. You can see a really interesting rendition of a 1930s car. You can also see the two gas pumps over here. And there's kind of an interesting level of detail. There are even hoses going down here for you to be able to take the nozzle out and pump gas into your car. This one is really hard to see in direct overhead light. So if you come out here to find it, you might have to, depending on the time of day, you might have to spend a little bit of time trying to find it. Here we have a bull. That they've really gone to the effort of carving the entire block to make it look like a bull. Right here we have an eagle perched on a rock. And finally we have a teepee carved into this stone. Got a crescent moon there, about halfway down. Again, not the finest artistic quality, but still a lot of fun and interesting nonetheless. Now, there used to be quite a few more carvings to be found out here, but when the Barrett building was renovated about 20 years ago, the construction meant that a lot of those remaining flagstones had to be taken up along with the carvings that were closer to the building. And a lot of those made their way out to the governor's residence here in Cheyenne, and they were put into a children's garden. But at the same time, quite a few more of them simply disappeared about that time. So I hope you enjoyed this look at some of the relics of local history that can be found here on the grounds of the Wyoming State Museum. If you have any questions about any of the things that I've shown you today, feel free to give me a call. I'd love to talk to you about it. And if you have anything similar in your neck of the woods, let me know about that too. It's a subject that I'm always really interested in. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.